Dear young unmarried couple, you think you've found the one and you're in love, or so you think, and you're just wondering, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm checking the right boxes and preparing well for marriage? I'm glad you're here and I'm glad you're listening, but we want to correct a few thoughts in that intro.
Yes. And here's the thing. No one walks into a dating situation thinking, I'm looking forward to having terrible marital issues. I think everyone wants a fantastic marriage.
Yeah.
But sadly enough, there are some people that are not equipped going in and make marriage much more difficult. So going in with the correct aim and just being equipped is a really big deal.
Yeah. And you said, some people are not equipped. Unfortunately, the reality is that most people are not equipped. Yeah. We both grew up in incredible families and we were not equipped.
No.
And so the idea is not that you need to be like fully equipped or else you can't get married, but you do need to set yourself up for success. And we're here to give you a few pointers and questions to ask in order to set yourself up for a higher chance of success.
And here's the secret that we don't have at the very beginning of in the title, right, or thumbnail here. But simply asking the questions isn't enough. We'll give you the questions to ask and the conversations to have. But there is something a little bit more that has to go on.
Yeah. You have to make sure that you're focused on not just what questions are being asked and if they answered them quote unquote correctly, but it's the spirit in which they're answering them and your ability to have discernment to know if they're, first of all, telling the truth.
Yeah.
But secondly, the spirit in which they're answering them. Are they here for me and for us? Are they here to fulfill the commission that's been put on their life from God for us if we are to be together for the rest of our lives? So it's less about the questions themselves. And like Adam said, we're going to give you those questions because it is important, but it's less about that and more about the discernment that you have about them and their character and their intentions.
Well, think about, what do you imagine a good marriage looks like? Maybe you had a great mentor with your parents, or maybe you had a friendship, you watch them. What elements are present in their marriage? So just think about it. Take them off in your mind. A lot of them have like good teamwork. Mm-hmm. They laugh together. They're honest. They're gentle. They're loving. They probably take influence from each other. So I ask that person to do something, and even though they may not want to, they'll do it. There's an attitude of service.
Yeah.
Now, if we go into marriage thinking about like these are the things that we want to have present in our marriage, then we can start aiming for that when we're sifting out the people that would be wonderful in a marriage with us and maybe not so much. And like what Chris has said, having that discernment, is there lots of, are there lies? That's a huge red flag. Are you catching this person in lies? When talking about these things? Because the questions that you really want to ask are not going to be on the surface, like what's your favorite color? There are deep questions and sometimes very embarrassing questions and stories that we will have to divulge when giving the answers. Mm-hmm. So what type of spirit is that person offering these truths to you with? Is it a spirit of humility? Is it laissez-faire, just brush it off? Is it scared and timid? Is it like, how is this? How do they do it? And ask, is this something that I could work with going on for years and years and years?
Right. Yeah, that's really good. And, Adam's saying, are you catching them in lies and are you using discernment? Keep in mind, and this is true of the science, this is just not theory, okay? But you are going to be in a rose-colored glasses stage where your brain, actually, they can tell from a neurological perspective and scans of the brain that your brain is actually not looking for the negative. Your brain is looking for the positive. Your reticular activating system is focused and honed in on, it's in positive sentiment override. So you're not really looking for, is this person lying, and, red flags. So it's crucial that you actually ask about them to those who are close to them, those, their pastor, parents, friends. You need to know more about the context, not just from them personally.
Yeah, and it's just such a good point that Chris is making here, that we do have this kind of rose-colored glasses on, and we see them through that positive light. This is why all of the love songs that are out there that everybody listens to and pumps in their car are all about that first fuzzy stage of marriage. And then, or they're singing about the breakup. Yeah. So like what we are really interested about is maybe a little bit beyond those rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
And starting to get to know, who is this person?
By the way, the rose-colored glasses stage lasts about 18 months to 2 years. So, and that's scientific. It's not just, like they fell out of love after 18 months to 2 years. Their brain works differently and excretes different chemicals after that 18 month to 24 month mark.
Right. So if you're in that stage, don't worry. This is God's design. This is a good thing. It helps you to bond to that person. There is also the danger, though, of bonding to that person, but finding out a whole bunch of red flags that might not work for you. So don't have I think the gambler's fallacy, if I stick it out longer, we'll win. If there are a lot of red flags and your gut doesn't feel like it, and your pastor's talking to you about it, and your parents are talking to you about it, and your mentor, maybe you should back up from that edge. Yeah. But there's also, on the flip side, there's a lot of people that are been hurt in relationships and going very slowly and are very slow to trust. That's also a danger. So you do have to kind of walk that middle ground of, okay, I'm going to do my best to trust, to open up, to listen, but then also keep your mind about you, knowing that there is that tendency to overlook red flags.
I had a client recently who's in the lending industry, and he said that one of their mantras is trust but verify. And so like you can trust this person, but verify. And it's not like you're going to be able to verify every single detail, but do your best to be diligent and verify certain things.
Yes. And over above, watch the spirit in which they tell you these things. Yeah. I think that's a huge factor. That's why when a lot of couples come to us for couples counseling before marriage, I feel like, by the way, that's brilliant. We do a lot of premarital counseling, but it does help someone else to also to point things out. Hey, like, tell me what was happening for you when we were telling this. You were getting emotional. What's behind that emotion? Or
you got defensive. Yeah. What's behind the defensiveness?
Exactly. So what we're doing right now is we're talking about the meta. It's not just the questions that are important here, but it's the emotions behind the questions and the emotions behind the answers that are most telling about that individual.
Side note, by the way, you mentioned premarital counseling and how it's such a benefit to get counseling before marriage, even before engagement. We recommend starting your premarital counseling before engagement. Yeah. But the studies show that getting premarital counseling, and actually not just like this one little session with a pastor, but like full, several sessions going through a program, reduces your divorce rate by 31%.
31%.
So the current divorce rate's about 50, right? It's hovering sometimes slightly under 50 at this point. It was slightly over 50 like a decade ago. But if you want to reduce that by 31% to where your divorce rate is at like 19%, then your chance, you're setting yourself up for success. Your chances of divorce go down big time.
Yeah. Do yourself a favor and do that. Just a little bit of, you could look at our prEquipped course.
Yeah.
We did not plan on selling that, but go check that out. We've had a lot of couples that maybe can't afford doing sessions, but if you just want to get some tools on board and have a structured way of conversating about these things. And then on top of that, like in the course, we actually counsel a couple. You see us going through it and the emotions that come up. And
it comes with worksheets. And also we give a free copy to your pastor or mentor, whoever's walking through those sessions with you. Yeah. So it's a no-brainer if you're engaged, or especially if you're thinking about getting engaged. definitely go to the link. We'll put the link in the show notes.
Yeah, this has been very, very helpful. And now it's awesome because this has been out for a couple years. And now we're, meeting people that have been through the course, that have been married for a couple of years and telling us, we still use those tools. Thank you so much. And
Yay.
it's so fun to hear from all of you that have been through it. So go do that. Do yourself a favor. Do your relationship a favor. I mean, this is the most important decision, I would say, or maybe one of the biggest, but I would say it's the biggest decision that you'll make. Why not do it with help and counsel? I don't see why you wouldn't want a lot of that.
Exactly. All right. So we're going to share with you those questions that we've been talking about since the beginning. And these are just sections of questions. So we broke it up into topics. So we'll start off with a spiritual foundation. So asking your person, what's your morning and evening routine like? Where do you fit in your time with the Lord? And what does that look like? Do you read a devotion? Do you pray just for a few minutes while you're getting ready? Or do you set aside, a chunk of time to just commune with the Lord? Where do you want to improve in your morning or evening routine? And not just in their relationship with the Lord, but also in what, are you taking vitamins? Are you exercising? What's your sleep, pre-sleep routine like?
Yeah, man. Just thinking about my routines back then were nothing like they are today. So you can't judge everything by that cover. But
look at aptitude as well, right?
Right. Well, and desire.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though they may not be where they want to be with prayer, the desire shows.
Yeah.
And is there all bluster of like, yeah, I do all this stuff, and you could just tell it's not actually happening? And these are just really good conversations to have. And then I can't see why it wouldn't be a fantastic idea to start to become a little bit accountable to each other for changing some of these things, because within marriage, where if this is where we're aiming, and it should be, then in marriage, it's all about helping each other become the best version of themselves around spirituality.
And making sure they have accountability outside of you as well. And that's another question you can ask in this section. Who's your accountability partner? What's your relationship like with your pastor? What's your relationship like with your parents? Some people's, parental situation, it doesn't benefit them to walk in lockstep with their parents. And some people it really does. And so ask about that. That kind of spills over into the next section on family of origin.
Also friendship.
Yeah.
What are your friendships like? Friendship is incredibly important the farther you get into your life. I would say I didn't know truly how to have a good friendship probably until I was about 30. So, and probably partly due to what marriage looks like and how that taught me to do that. So yeah. All right. Next section, family of origin.
How are you like or unlike your father or mother?
Yeah.
What family traditions do you like or dislike? What about your family of origin do you want to repeat in your marriage? And what do you not want to repeat in your marriage?
So helpful to have these. You could have 5 conversations on this and spend a whole bunch of hours on it, just because our family of origin affects our attachment styles. It affects just about every aspect of our lives. So good conversation to have. The next one would be love languages. So getting to know, how do you express love? What should I be looking for when you're saying I love you? What does that look like? What do you do, or how do you say it when you're saying I love you? And what do you accept best from me, or what do you want to accept from me? Is it physical touch? Is it words of affirmation? Is it, and it's really good to know those things.
And you can go take that 5 love languages quiz. It's like a 5-minute quiz, free, 5lovelanguages.com.
Yeah. And actually, if you look back in our episodes in our podcast, we actually interviewed the author of the 5 love languages,
Dr. Gary Chapman. So you can go look that up in the episode.
Fantastic episode.
All right, next section is parenting. So what's your basic philosophy on parenting? What did you observe from your own parents or parents around you that you liked or didn't like? How many children do you want to have? Those are some of the basics that most couples will talk about anyway. But what are your views on discipline? What are your views on public school and homeschooling?
Yeah, very big things that have to be talked about.
Because for some people, those are like make or break situations.
Yeah.
Some people, it's not as much of a black and white, and they can flex a little bit depending on their spouse's or soon to be spouse's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
But for some people, like, man, if you don't agree with me on this area, we're done.
Yeah. I want to have 20 kids and I don't want to have 20 kids, like you're going to have to rectify that somehow.
And if you were going to have 20 kids, let's talk.
Yeah. The next one would be conflict resolution. And this might be something that you learn ongoingly with that person, because a lot of people don't like to admit that they're bad at disagreeing with people. Yeah. But finding out what was the conflict resolution, like what that looked like in your home growing up, and then past relationships. Why did what happened?
Yeah.
How did you argue? What do you find yourself doing? What are you not proud of in that arena?
Yeah. Yeah. And in your relationship with this person, when you guys argue, because by the way, it's good to argue, but when you guys argue, how are you arguing well? Do you brainstorm solutions together as a team? Well, does each person have the opportunity to voice their perspective?
Yes.
And then are you receiving influence from the other person?
Yeah.
And do they receive influence from you? And then also, what does their sorry look like? So you can ask them if you've never been able to see it, which hopefully you have. But when you've apologized to somebody, what did that look like? How did you go about that?
I just saw a comment a while back on our YouTube channel, and someone said, "I've never seen anyone in my life say I'm sorry." And I said, I was just thinking, wow, how heartbreaking to never have a mend. Because when you say I'm sorry, you're mending that relationship. There was a breach, something happened, and there was a little bit of hurt there. Sorry says, hey, I see that, and I want to change that. And I want to make myself safe.
Yeah.
So that's a really important skill to develop. And so many people get stuck in right or wrong here. It's not always about right or wrong. It's about, was the other person hurt?
Yes.
So here we go. What's the next one?
Next section is roles and responsibilities. So in your family, who does which tasks? And is that based on tradition, skill, need, preference? How do you want to do that in your marriage? So you're asking that person, what was it like growing up? What did you observe? But also, do you want to make any changes to that?
So that's a big deal.
Yes. And we actually recently did a whole episode on roles and responsibilities. We called it Your Marriage is Not 50-50. So watch that if you guys want some context for that conversation.
Absolutely. The number 8 is stress. How do you manage stress? How stressed are you in any given day? What do you do to relieve it? Because the fact of the matter is, we live in a very chaotic world, and a lot of us are going around with chronic stress. Yeah. This does enter into your marriage. So finding this out, observing this, having open conversations about it now, rather than just being overwhelmed by it and snapping, it's a very good idea to have these conversations.
The next one's personality. So asking them straight up, what's your personality type? And they can give you a broad answer, but you can even take an assessment like 16personalities.com. It's based on the Myers-Briggs.
Fantastic.
And it's a little free version of Myers-Briggs. But we would recommend taking that personality assessment and talking about how you guys would complement each other's personalities and where there might be some stress or strain based on personality differences.
Yeah. And I would say you don't have to call off an engagement or marriage or whatever else because of a personality difference.
No.
They're like, oh, these two personalities don't match. But the way you're acting, that's for sure something that could be a red flag.
Definitely.
We don't place a ton of weight on like these two personalities don't work out.
No, because you could complement each other, but definitely discuss how those personality traits can complement and where the stressors would be.
And it's funny that sometimes the biggest compliments to each other are also the biggest benefits, because my weaknesses are normally your frustrations.
And then
my strengths.
The strengths, vice versa. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Last one. Values and leisure. So what are your similar interests? What interests are completely opposite, and how will you still get those needs fulfilled if your spouse or soon to be spouse isn't interested in those things?
Yeah. Having a thing that you both connect on. I heard one author call it a third thing. that you agree on, that you work toward, that you have fun with, that make you laugh together, is vitally important for a relationship. So making sure that you guys have some similarities.
And what topics of conversations get you guys talking more deeply? Do you talk about theological concepts, the sermon at church, scriptural concepts? Do you talk about political views and political concepts? What gets you talking more deeply, and do you share values in those areas?
Which is a very big deal, especially with around political stuff. Having similar values can really help a marriage, but definitely would hurt a marriage is having separate values around these big things. So take these questions, maybe write some of these down, these ideas, and or even listen to this episode together.
Yep.
And then talk about it and make notes of how this person is in that conversation. It should teach you a lot.
We love you guys.